This is the RX 6400. It's tiny, it's cheap, but can it play games good? That's a good question. Yes. Yes, it can. Hello, how's it going? I'm TechDweeb, welcome. This is the Sapphire low-profile RX 6400. It is freaking adorable. Look at it. Look at it! If this isn't the cutest GPU you've ever seen, well, go step on a Lego. Sorry, that was harsh. I didn't mean it. Come on, you have to admit that this thing is super cute. I've always had a soft spot for low-profile GPUs. The T600 and the T400 are recently released low-profile GPUs, and they're freaking adorable too. The GTX 1650 and the 1050 Ti, they both have low-profile versions, although they're not single-slot like these bad boys. I think it's the minimalist in me that likes the low-profile, single-slot nature of these GPUs. They take up no more space than they need to, and it's always fascinating to me that they can offer just as much performance and cooling potential as their big full-size versions. Usually. I don't have two RX 6400s to test today, but in the past I did compare the full-size GTX 1050 Ti with the low-profile version, and it was like identical in terms of performance and cooling. The low-profile version was a tiny bit louder though. We'll see how the 6400 does. Now, they do make a bigger RX 6400, like a full-size desktop version, so I would be interested in seeing how this low-profile version compares to that, but my hunch is that they'd be pretty much the same. Oh, and before you ask, yes, I will be doing another video where I compare the RX 6400 to the NVIDIA T600. I suspect that the RX 6400 will do better in terms of both performance and value, but we'll save that for the other video. So get subscribed so you don't miss that. I guess we should talk about the 6400 itself, huh? Well, this is the latest GPU from AMD. 4GB of GDDR6 VRAM, 768 shading units, 128GB per second memory bus, and a 53W TDP. It suffers from the same shortcomings that the 6500 XT suffers from. It's only 4 PCIe lanes, so that might offer reduced performance on PCIe Gen 3 systems, although I showed in my 6500 XT review that the difference is pretty negligible. It does only have 2 display outputs. That's a bit of a bummer, no doubt about it. And it does have hardware encoding, or AV1 decoding, so it's not going to be ideal for recording your gameplay using OBS, and it is straight up incompatible with AMD Relieve, which again, that's a bummer for sure. But if you don't care about recording or streaming or running over 3 displays, then I dare say that this is a great choice for a budget GPU. This is currently the cheapest new GPU that you could buy. NVIDIA isn't giving us any low-end budget GPUs. AMD gave us the RX 6500 XT, and now we get the RX 6400. This cost me $160. If you told me a few months ago that we'd soon be able to buy new GPUs for $160, I'd have called you a liar and slapped you right in the face. But that would have been wrong of me. Because it's true, ladies and gentlemen, we have budget GPUs again. But the big question is, can it game? Can you actually get $160 worth of gaming goodness from an RX 6400? Well, let's answer that, shall we? Yeah? We shall? Alright, let's shall. This is running in my main rig with a Ryzen 7 5800X, 32GB of 3600MHz RAM, and a PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSD. And the GPU is running on PCIe Gen 4 as well. I think I'll do another video comparing Gen 3 to Gen 4. It's not really that big of a deal, and I think it deserves its own video. So we'll stick to Gen 4 for this video and save that Gen 3 stuff for the other video. Oh, and by the way, all of the gameplay was recorded using CPU encoding on the system while I was gaming. So if you have a good enough CPU to handle the encoding, then the lack of encoders isn't going to be a problem for you. Real quick, 2 quick benchmarks here at the very start. I'm going to start with Shadow of the Tomb Raider, as I tend to do. What I wanted to show you here is that this GPU has native support for Radeon Super Resolution, or RSR, which is AMD's driver-wide FSR implementation. It was just released, it's new. You can enable RSR system-wide, and then you could run any game at lower resolution, and the driver will upscale it with FSR sharpening. So it looks like it's running at a higher resolution than it is with minimal performance loss. It's the same as sharpening algorithm as FSR, so the graphics will look the same on FSR or RSR, but it does it on the whole screen at once. So it's not as good as FSR, which can be applied only to the 3D layer of the game's graphics, and then you can have the UI stuff be your native monitor's resolution. But why RSR is awesome is that you can run it on any game. So here in Shadow the Tomb Raider, we don't have built-in FSR support. So I'm running the game at 720p, upscaled to 1080p, using RSR. It doesn't look as good as native 1080p, but it's not far off. And the huge boost in FPS that RSR will give us in any title, that means that for super demanding games that don't have FSR implemented, we can run them at lower resolutions and enjoy that RSR upscaling to increase the quality. Any AMD GPU from the 5000 or 6000 series can use this tech, by the way. It's just cool that we're getting access to it even on the budget end of the lineup. So here in Shadow the Tomb Raider at medium settings, we get 79 FPS. And here's another game that I took advantage of RSR. Here's Metro Exodus Enhanced, 720p, lowest settings, with ray tracing enabled. And we're getting 31 FPS. I wanted to include some Metro Exodus Enhanced because this is really interesting. It's running better on this RX 6400 than it did when I tested it on the 6500 XT. I don't know if it's just that Gigabyte Eagle model of the 6500 XT that I had, or there might have been something else going on when I tested this before. So it's nice to see it running better, but take that with a grain of salt. If you didn't know, this game requires ray tracing. You literally can't run this game without a ray tracing GPU, and we're getting a playable 31 FPS. It's not amazing. The RSR looks better than native 720p, but not as good as 1080p. But I did play for a bit, and it was totally playable and enjoyable. The fact that you can run ray tracing on this $160 low-profile GPU and get playable FPS, that's pretty freaking cool. For the 6500 XT, I did a separate video where I showed how it handles ray tracing in a variety of games, and I think I'm gonna do that with this GPU too. Is that something you'd like to see? Let me know in the comments below if you'd find that useful. Alright, on to the main gaming tests. The rest of the tests are going to be run without RSR. So, back to Shadow the Tomb Raider. At 1080p native medium settings, we get 57 FPS. That's freaking awesome. Yeah, RSR is going to be great to give us a boost when we can't run modern games at 1080p. But the fact that Tomb Raider, a very nice looking game, runs at 55 FPS at 1080p medium on this $160 GPU, that just blows my mind. It shouldn't. This is the kind of price to performance ratio that we should be getting in 2022. But if the last few years have taught us anything, it's that life isn't fair and it doesn't matter what you should be able to get. Suck it up, shut up, and give us your money. Well, budget GPUs are back, baby. And I, for one, am pretty excited. Thank you very much. Here's a little Assassin's Creed Valhalla, 1080p, medium preset. We get a very solid 48 FPS. The game looks awesome at these settings, and it plays great, really great. This is one of those graphical showcase games, as the Assassin's Creed series tend to be. It's just freaking beautiful. And it's running so good on this GPU. By this point in my testing, I was really excited because I wasn't expecting it to perform this good. The performance seems to be only a little bit less than the 6500 XT. And this is a single slot, low profile, budget GPU. I can't stress that enough. It's pretty cool that we're getting this kind of performance from a new, low profile GPU. Resident Evil Village, 1080p, balanced FSR, medium settings. We got an average of 75 FPS. This is another graphical showcase game. The game engine looks really amazing. This game does support ray tracing, but I didn't bother with that here. As you guys know, I don't personally care for ray tracing. I don't think it looks very good, considering the huge performance hit. I made a whole video on that. There's a link in the description below if you want to check that out. But I did choose to use the built-in FSR to give a bit of a performance boost. And honestly, a balanced FSR looks so good, you'll barely notice it enabled, especially during gameplay. Performance FSR, that's a different story. That usually doesn't look very good, but I'm a-okay with taking a bit of a performance hit to the crispness of the visuals to get the performance up, especially when I can barely notice the effect.
Hurry! Hurry!
Took your damn time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Let's move over to GTA 5, our game benchmark standard candle. This is running at 1080p, very high settings, which is pretty much the maximum settings in this game except for the extra fancy features like scaling. At these settings, we got an average of 100 FPS. I think people like to see how GTA 5 runs, not just because it's a popular game that people still play, but also because it's so well optimized that it runs on anything. But when you crank up the settings to maximum, it can still be pretty demanding, even on modern hardware. 100-ish FPS on GTA 5 at max settings, that's pretty impressive for a $160 GPU. Moving along to The Witcher 3, running at 1080p with the medium preset, we got 66 FPS average. I probably should have upped a few of the settings to aim for 60 FPS. This game runs great at 60 FPS. I mean, it's a third-person exploration game, so you can run at lower FPS if you need to, but I really like the animation and the camera movement in this game, so I like to keep it closer to 60. It's a bit of an older game, and it still looks great, even by today's standards. Plays great too. Man, this is just such a great game. I love it to bits. Moving along to Cyberpunk 2077. I'm running at 1080p, medium preset, but with balanced FSR, and we got an average of 50 FPS. 50 FPS. It's Cyberpunk. I mean, it's using balanced FSR, and it's not 60, but this is Cyberpunk. It doesn't run well on anything. I wasn't expecting to be able to play in the medium preset and get anything even close to playable, let alone 50 freaking FPS. And I'm going to keep saying it, this is a low-profile, single-slot GPU in 2022, and it's only 160 bucks, and it's playing freaking Cyberpunk at medium settings. I'm feeling pretty good about this, not gonna lie. Here's some Battlefield 1 running at 1080p with the medium preset. We got 92 FPS average. This is my main competitive shooter at the moment. I play it a couple times a week. There's no ray tracing like in Battlefield 5, but it's still pretty demanding, even by today's standards. And the game looks awesome too. This is my favorite Battlefield game. I liked 5, but after playing a while, I just went back to Battlefield 1. I feel like this was a return to what made Battlefield 3 so great. It's just that simple, fun Battlefield gameplay without too many weird gadgets and vehicles and extra stuff. Simple, quick unlocks, and the maps are just a good mix of cover and open areas with pathways to move through them safely and a good variety. I don't know, I just feel like Battlefield sometimes loses its way in many titles and forgets what it feels like for players to spend time progressing through the game. I'm no Battlefield expert, obviously, but I know what I like, and I like Battlefield 1. This is my favorite. Let's do some 1080p, ultra settings, 106 FPS average. I've talked about this game many times because I usually include it in the gameplay tests. This is a game where you want high FPS for that snappy, crunchy, satisfying gameplay. But it also looks really good when you can crank up the settings. Playing this on my 100Hz WQHD monitor is a sight to behold, let me tell you. Man, I wonder if this GPU could run some games at my ultra-wide resolution, which is 3400 by 1440, which is higher than 1440p. I'd have to lower the settings, obviously, but maybe with RSR it could be done. That would make a fun video, actually. WQHD gaming on this $160 low-profile GPU. Would you watch that? And here's some Far Cry New Dawn. I haven't played much of this game, I don't think I'm gonna like it very much from my initial impressions, but I need a new Far Cry game and I haven't pulled the trigger on Far Cry 6 yet. Far Cry 6 looks good, but I figure at this point I might as well wait for the complete edition on sale or something. Do you guys have Far Cry 6? Should I get it? My favorite is Far Cry Primal, but that's because I'm a caveman at heart. This game feels like Far Cry 5, which I did like, but with a cheesy version of Borderlands post-apocalyptic stuff thrown on top. I need to give it more of a chance, but my first impressions are kinda meh. Oh, I guess I should talk about how it runs, huh? 1080p, ultra preset, 65 FPS. There you go.
Made it.
And last, but certainly not least, Red Dead Redemption 2. And it also runs great. 1080p with the Xbox One equivalent settings from Digital Foundry, we got an average of 55 FPS. This is one of those games that gives some weird performance. Some settings just tank the FPS and don't really add much to the game's visuals, and some GPUs just don't like this game. It's always a bit of a wild card, so I'm happy when it runs well, and it's running beautifully here on the 6400. Not just because it looks beautiful, and it does look beautiful, obviously, but because it's running so well. I don't even need the FPS this high in this game. I think this was locked to 30 FPS on the Xbox One anyways, so getting 55 FPS on the cheapest new budget GPU that's available is pretty cool. You know, since I started my channel, I've had a few big surprises. The T600 was a pretty big surprise back in the height of the scalpocalypse a few months ago. I wasn't expecting much from the 6400, but I got way more gaming enjoyment than I expected. This thing is awesome. Coming off the heels of my last video where I tested the GTX 1060, this thing is doing pretty much the same as that GPU, and this was only $160 new. I mean, this is what we should expect. New GPUs should be cheap and offer the same or better performance than flagship GPUs from a few years ago. But after everything we've been through, with the inflation and the shortages and crypto miners and scalpers and predatory business practices, it feels extra special now that we're actually getting GPUs that game this good for the price. And it's low profile, single slot, and it's whisper quiet. It only pulls 50 watts of power. Yes, it has shortcomings. The lack of encoding and only 2 monitor support, that'll be a deal breaker for some people. But even still, at this price, it gives you a lot of gaming goodness. This is pretty much the perfect 1080p medium settings GPU. Most modern games will be able to stick to 1080p medium, with a few exceptions, and older games will have no problem running at high settings. For a $160 GPU in 2022, this is what we need right now. Budget GPUs that get us up at gaming without needing to take out a second mortgage on our mom's basement. And the fact that this thing is low profile and will fit in any small form factor office PC to instantly transform it into a competent gaming PC, that's just the icing on the cake. Oh, speaking of which, I'm considering making another video with this GPU where I do just that. Shove it in a small form factor office PC to make a budget gaming PC, like I did with the Dell Optiplex in a recent video. Is that something you'd like to see? Let me know in the comments. Also, I didn't show any esports games in this review because I'm gonna do another entire video on how this GPU performs for esports titles, like Fortnite, CSGO, Warzone, all those kind of games. So get subscribed if you don't want to miss that. Well, that's it. In my opinion, this is an excellent value. You get a lot of gaming performance for the low cost of entry, and I'm actually quite surprised that I like it as much as I do. But I'd like to hear what you think. Does the lack of encoding or 3+ monitor support bother you? What about the performance? Are you considering grabbing one of these? Do you have one already? How's it doing? Give us your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're down there, click the thumbs up button if you liked the video, or the thumbs down button if you didn't. Subscribe for more videos like this. Hit the bell if you haven't yet. What are you waiting for? As always, I'm TechDweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.